are back again with another vlog episode, and in this one I'm pretty much going to go through how you would effectively go through a program of staggered nutrition. So if you have a particular goal, fat loss, muscle gain, whatever, you are generally going to find people advocate for some sort of staggered approach to that, right? And that can look a lot different depending on the person you're talking to and depending on the actual specifics of the goal. So if you looked at my previous video where I was like, this is what the outline of my nutritional plan is going to be. Now, that video was somewhat retrospective because I was talking about how I set up my nutrition when I came back from America, right? And again, the goal of the nutrition for that period of time was to effectively lose a little bit of fat that had accumulated, enjoying the food over in America. I was still, somewhat tracking, somewhat being mindful of my calories, but there was still some fat gain, especially towards the end of the holiday, because we're doing a lot of traveling. There was some days there'd be very little exercise because I'd be driving for 7-9 hours, whatever, but obviously that'd be interspersed with doing like an 11-hour hike, so there was a lot more variability in my days, even though I was somewhat tracking, somewhat keeping an eye on at least protein intake. Food was a little bit all over the place, right? So I come back from holidays and I'm thinking, I wouldn't mind just, losing a little bit of fat, getting back into a rhythm, seeing some, really quick, fast results from that. It keeps you motivated. It's a little bit more motivating to actually see the results, come week by week, where, muscle gain, it takes months, years to actually, accrue. Same with performance. Like you might see some, slow increases in performance, you might see some fast increases in performance, but realistically performance is a multi-month, multi-year endeavor. You're not going to put 50 kilos on your squat in 12 weeks unless you are a rank beginner, So I'm coming back from holiday. I'm thinking, we're going to start a fat loss phase, get back into a routine, get back into some structure, right? So I've done that for 8 weeks, right? But we're essentially coming up to winter now, like I'm looking out into the field that is outside my house onto the mountains, and they're pretty much just covered in rain, right? Like there's just blanket rain across the mountains, like I'm in Dublin, so we essentially get, shielded by those mountains. So as soon as anything comes over those mountains, it's just rain. Right, and I'll show you, I'm going to turn you around so you can see, there's just rain outside there, right? So again, I'm thinking, do I really want to continue to engage in fat loss? Especially considering that I have a few events coming up. I have exams coming up. I have, Christmas is coming up. My birthday is also in January. I might be going away sometime in the new year, stuff like that, right? And again, looking towards my longer term goals, I'd rather be in my best shape, physical presentation of the physique for summer, right? And, maybe I've lost some muscle over that, summer period just gone when I was in America. Training wasn't as consistent, different things, performance wasn't as good, or, my ability to get consistency with my training wasn't as good, right? So I'm starting to think, I'm like, okay, so maybe I should transition to more of a gaining phase perhaps. But what I generally do in these kind of situations is look at that longer time period of what you're trying to achieve, what's the ultimate objective, and how should you then structure your nutrition to actually accomplish those goals, right? So I know for me, I want to be in shape for next summer. That's the goal that I have in mind. But I also want my performance to be at its best, right? And right now I'm kind of at the 90%. I've been dieting for 8 weeks, before this week, right? So I've been dieting for like 8 weeks. So, that's when you just start to kind of feel that you're in a bit of a deficit. Like, you might have had hunger or whatever, but as I've said before, I wasn't in a huge deficit. I wasn't on like 1,000 calorie deficit, and I was seeing results, but I was starting to notice in that kind of 8 weeks that, my rate of gain of strength, performance, whatever, wasn't as good as it could be, right? So I'm thinking, looking at my longer term picture, like I got down to the lowest my weight got was on last Friday or Saturday. It was 90.2, And again, I always said that the goal was to just kind of get back to that roughly 90 kilo range, right? And that generally means that my walking around weight then is like 92, because as soon as you go back up to like maintenance calories, you have a bit more glycogen, a bit more water, a bit more maybe salt in the diet, there's a bit more food volume, you're going to gain some weight. And for me, that generally translates into like 2 to 3 kilos of gain. So I know for me, whenever I diet and then transition back to maintenance, that I generally gain like 2 to 3 kilos just the next day, again, water, whatever else, which is something that you should keep in mind when you are engaging in a fat loss, and especially then when you're transitioning out of that. Like, you shouldn't be hugely emotionally attached to the scales, because they are just a representation of the interaction of your body and gravity, and the world. It's not really a representation of what you're actually trying to achieve. If you're trying to achieve a certain look or a certain performance metric or whatever, the scales weight is just one kind of proxy for that. It's not the be all and end all, and that applies across the board. Guys get emotionally attached to their weight, women get emotionally attached to their weight, athletes get emotionally attached to their weight. But again, it is a variable rather than a constant. Now obviously, if you're a weight class athlete, you probably have to keep an eye on it a bit more, but they're the only population really that have to really keep a close eye on their weight. So again, this is where I'm at. I'm like, okay, now I know my goals coming up for the next few weeks, months, all that kind of stuff, and for me, it doesn't make sense to continually put myself into a deficit. Just consider this, right? So I continue with the deficit. I continue trying to lose weight. I've already achieved my 90 kilo goal, so I'd be kind of just doing it for the sake of getting extraordinarily lean, which that's a goal that I kind of want to achieve for the summertime, but it's not necessarily a present goal. It's not the exact goal I want to achieve right now. And if you remember back to the vlog, I was talking about kind of goal setting and setting out what you're trying to achieve. You might be biasing health, you might be biasing performance, you might be biasing body composition, and obviously they all interplay together, but there's going to be different ones that you bias at a given time. So for me, I was biasing that, but I've already achieved the goal that I set out to achieve. So I know then that doesn't necessarily need to stay as my bias. That doesn't necessarily need to stay as a thing that I focus on, that I have as the main focus of my programming, my nutrition, all that kind of stuff, So I've essentially brought in a staggered approach. Now, I've already brought my calories up. Today is like Thursday or something, I've already brought my calories up to roughly where my maintenance is, right? And again, for me, that's 3,000 calories. Like I said before, once I started dieting, it was around 3,200, 250 or around there. And now that I've lost some weight, again, I've noticed how my body has responded. I've seen how my weight fluctuates, all that kind of stuff. I've taken all that data and I've kind of gone, okay, so 3,000 calories. That seems to be where my maintenance is at currently. Right, so I brought my calories back up to that, mainly from carbs and fats, mainly from carbs and then a little bit of fats as well. And I immediately noticed, performance just took that little jump up, because again, I've more fuel on board. It's now Thursday. I had my lower body training session, and I noticed that I definitely did have more energy. Reps were a little bit easier to get. Strength felt it was a little bit more there, but that's obviously a function of having more calories, And now, in terms of how my weight progressed, it literally went, I was at 90.2 when I did it on Monday. Again, I was 90.4. Tuesday, 92. Wednesday, 92.1 or something. Today, I think I was 91.8. So again, I know I'm kind of in and around that 92 kilo mark, which makes sense. Again, as I said, I know I always tend to jump up 2 to 3 kilos once I go back to roughly maintenance, and obviously there's interday variability with that as well, right? Now, again, you might be thinking like, oh, why don't you just continue your fat loss? Why don't you achieve your goals earlier? If you're kind of planning like, oh, you want to be lean for summer? Why don't you just get really, really lean now and then just maintain that? You know, like I'm relatively lean, you know, Gen Pop relatively lean, like definitely not like bodybuilder lean or anything like that. But you know, I can see abs, you know, I can see visible muscle, you know, that kind of lean. And for me, I noticed that getting leaner than that point is a bigger effort than the return on investment, if that makes sense. Because, you know, I can get that lean and I feel good. I feel performance is relatively good. You know, yeah, you'll notice the day-to-day, you know, deficit feelings. You know, if you've ever dieted, you'll kind of know that energy isn't exactly 100%. You're not exactly enthused to get extra steps. You know, you don't have excess energy, which obviously makes sense, you know. And again, given my goals, and I'm like, that's the next summer that I want to achieve that. You know, if I continue to diet, I get lean, we'll say another 8 weeks of dieting, I'm essentially lean for January. And that means that I then have to maintain that lean physique for all of January, all of February, March, April, May, June, which is when I intend to actually be lean for, you know, that kind of June, July, August time frame, you know. So it's like, that means I have to essentially maintain that really, really lean physique for 5 months, which obviously can be done. You can definitely maintain an extremely lean physique for a long period of time, especially if you're not going to like bodybuilding lean levels, you know, which I don't intend to. However, me personally, I know that I perform better. I feel more energetic. I subjectively feel healthier when I am at a slightly higher body fat range than that. You know, like that for me makes me feel more energetic, makes me feel like I have better like cognitive abilities. I'm more like on the ball, more creative, that kind of stuff. So for me, it doesn't make sense to try to really maintain a reduced, we'll call it, performance level. You know, and that again is day-to-day performance, gym performance, life performance, all of those, like mental performance, all of that stuff I'm putting under that performance category. You know, so it doesn't make sense for me to try to maintain that when I could just do what I'm currently doing, which is effectively taking 8 weeks out of the long-term goal and going, I'm going to eat at maintenance for this period of time. So that brings me up to the January period, you know, so essentially going to eat at maintenance for November and December, and then in January assess how my physique, how my performance, how all those kind of metrics have gone on, and then engage in either another month of eating at maintenance or start the diet then, you know. And again, like think about that, just how much easier that is. We'll say again, it takes me 8 to 12 weeks to get into that really good shape that I want to get into. You know, that's kind of whatever, that's January, February, March, and then I only have to maintain that for April, May, and then into June and all forward, you know. So that's essentially I only have to maintain it for 2 months with this approach, rather than trying to maintain it for 5 months with the other approach, you know. So again, looking at the long term and when you actually want to have something be the main focus, or when you want to be peaked for, essentially, you can make better decisions. And a lot of people kind of lose sight of their actual goals and make poor choices because they get obsessed with the process, if that makes sense, you know. Like people are like, oh, I only know how to diet, you know, and they're either on or off their diet. They're like constantly dieting, and they've never actually gone through some sort of structured maintenance phase. You know, they've never actually tried to maintain a level of leanness, you know. So it's going to be easier to maintain a level of leanness, you know, that's only, we'll say, 5% away from where you normally are at. Like say you just naturally hang around at 20% body fat, you know, and you're like, okay, well, I've never really dieted before. I'm going to diet for 8, 12, 16 weeks. I'm now at 15%. I'm going to do a month of trying to maintain this, you know. I'm going to actually just do 2 months of just maintaining this level of body fatness, you know. And then after that, yeah, okay, I'm going to go back into a diet, try to get down to, I don't know, 10%, you know, and then I'm going to try and maintain that. But you've already practiced maintaining a higher level of body fat, you know. This is something that people just completely ignore, like the actual maintenance of the results you get, you know. And when you've done this a few times, you'll actually notice it's like especially you'll see it in the fitness sphere, people talking about this. People will say that they find it hard to maintain, a really lean physique, and they'll try it though, and the only reason they know that they find it hard is because they've tried it, So if you are engaging in fat loss, like you should try maintaining a certain level of fatness for a period of time. And that again could be 15%, it could be 12%, it could be 8%, it could be, okay, you want to try, I want to get down to 6% body fat, absolutely shredded, bodybuilder, lean, whatever, and you want to try and maintain it. Once you've done that, you'll realize it's like, okay, it's easier to maintain certain levels of body fatness. You could talk about your set point, your settling point of body fat, but ultimately it's a somewhat subjective feeling where you're like, I actually feel good, feel energetic, and I'm able to have good performance at a certain body fat, and maintaining that is quite easy, but you have to have practiced that. And again, this is something that I've started doing a lot with clients, is having periods of time where you are distinctly dieting and having periods of time where you are distinctly maintaining. Like you can call them a diet break. That's one way to do it. If you're like, okay, my ultimate goal is to reach whatever 10% body fat, and once I start noticing fat loss slows, or my energy doesn't feel good, or my performance decreases, or whatever, I'm going to implement a diet break. I'm going to go back to maintenance for a week, 2 weeks, and then I'm going to go back into a dieting phase. That's one way to do it. But there is also the other approach of maintaining for a longer period of time. Like I'm going to try to do roughly 2 months of maintaining. Now there are going to be some hypercaloric days, like on Christmas. I like to eat with my family. I like to eat with my girlfriend's family, that kind of stuff. And like the food is good. I'm not going to be like, obsessively counting my calories. So I know there's going to be a few days that are potentially higher calorie, and I might bring in approaches to reduce calories on other days so that I stay on track with the weekly schedule, but I also probably won't. So I'm accepting that, and I know there's a few events along the way of exams and different things coming up. So for me, I know if I can just maintain for the next 2 months, that sets me up to a really good position then going forward, So this kind of staggered approach to what's the ultimate goal, when does the ultimate goal actually have to be achieved, and then what's the best approach of going to achieve that, And again, like I know that like performance is one of my main goals as well, because doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, although this rib is still kind of at me, doing performance or having performance goals as well. So I know I want to also prioritize them. So being in this huge deficit or trying to maintain a level of body fatness that my body kind of rebels against a little bit, like doesn't want to stay that lean, it's going to impact my performance goals, and again, that's cognitive as well. Like I notice I feel more creative, have more energy for thoughts and stuff like that when I do have more calories, which obviously going to be good coming up to exams and things like that, So essentially what I want you to get from this one of my vlogs is you can stagger the approach you take to your goals, and in some cases that might be a very effective method. As I was saying, like I've started doing this with my clients, having distinct periods of dieting and distinct periods of like maintaining, or I've frequently called it like gaintaining. You're trying to gain strength or gain muscle while eating roughly maintenance calories, which again is possible. It's not like you're going to completely transform your physique, get some sort of body recomposition, but it definitely is possible to gain strength, gain muscle once you are fueling the body with what it needs, So I've really started implementing that, and I've seen really good results with individuals, and it's something that I've done throughout my personal training, history, like training for different sports and whatever, like having periods of time where it's like my goal is just to maintain my physique, strength, performance, whatever. But I see a lot of people in the health and fitness world not actually doing this, or rather, fitness professionals are doing this, but I don't think they're communicating this approach well to their audience. Like if you go on our site, we have a section on the lifetime calorie appropriate diet, and that's essentially eating in a manner that you can eat forever, and then maintain your physique, maintain what you've achieved. Well, I call it gaintain what you've achieved, in terms of you might still be increasing performance, muscle gain, you might lose a little bit of fat here and there, and you might go through periods of time where you're prioritizing one or other of those things, but there's not a huge variance. You're not trying to gain 20 kilos of muscle, you're not trying to lose 20 kilos of fat, you're just always in and around where you want to be for forever, you know. Obviously that means that you've already achieved somewhat or some decent chunk of what you want to achieve, you know, health, physique, performance, etc. wise, and you're happy with that and happy to, you know, eat appropriately for the rest of your life, a calorie appropriate diet, you know. So it's something to consider, especially because the industry generally just talks in terms of like cutting and bulking and that kind of stuff, whereas like you know, if we actually talk about maintaining at some stages, it actually makes the conversation a lot more nuanced, and it actually makes the conversation a much more realistic conversation to everyday individuals. You know, it doesn't always have to be, I'm trying to gain as much muscle as possible and fat gain is acceptable, that's cool, that's fine, you know, or I'm trying to lose as much fat as possible in a shorter period of time as possible. It's like they're just completely total opposite ends of the spectrum, and it's like there's so much nuance in between, you know, especially for, you know, everyday individuals. Like a lot of people just want to, you know, achieve a decent level of body fatness. They feel comfortable in their clothes. They feel comfortable sitting down. They're not like, oh, like I have a roll here, and like they're just feeling uncomfortable in their physique. Most people just want to get to a level of body fatness that they feel good. They feel confident. They feel that their health is where it needs to be, you know, and then they just want to kind of maintain that. Yeah, they want to improve performance, they want to feel healthy, they want to feel strong, they want to feel fit, whatever else, but the conversation around maintaining a physique, maintaining strength, maintaining all that kind of stuff, it's kind of glossed over because, you know, fat loss sells, muscle gain sells. Maintaining what you have doesn't really sell as well. So it's something to consider. Again, the way I've done it is literally just assessed how my body has responded, brought my calories back up to maintenance, which we might do another video on the podcast and stuff like that. We have talked about it before, but bringing your calories back up to maintenance is a difficult enough thing to do because it implies that you know where your maintenance is, and a lot of people think that maintenance calories are a static number when in reality it's a fluctuating number, you know, based on your activity level, based on, you know, your size, gender, all other everything that could possibly input into the whole calories argument. You know, it's based on all that stuff, and it can be difficult to know where to or how to increase, like what is the level to increase to. But generally I just go, how has my fat loss been going, and from that you can kind of back extrapolate a little bit. But also I basically just increase it to where I think it is, and then based on how my body is responding, then I can change it. You know, it's always going to be guesswork to some extent, you know, even with the best calculators, the best calculations, even if you know all the inputs, you're still going to have to try and see, you know, like you could increase your calories and all of a sudden, you know, that like your body just gets really, really warm. You just start losing a load of heat to the environment, or your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, your NEAT just goes up rapidly, like you're just constantly fidgeting, constantly moving around. Like a lot of people notice that, you know, and you don't know that ahead of time. You might know that ahead of time because you've done it before, but even then, that's not a 100% guarantee that it's going to happen, or it's going to happen to the same extent. Again, it's not a static reaction. It's not this is the exact way that it happens every time across all individuals. You know, there's both inter-individual difference and intra-individual difference. So again, you have to take all of that stuff into account. But again, not to get sidetracked with this, the video, staggered nutrition, periodized nutrition, you could call it, in terms of work towards your goal, but actually respect the timeline that you're working with and the events that you're working with. And also always keep in the back of your mind that there's going to come a time when you want to just maintain what you've worked for, you know. This is also something that you'll see me talk about again when it comes to summer. So I'll hopefully, you know, hopefully I've achieved the level of body fatness that I want to achieve then, and then I'm going to try and maintain that across the summer, you know. So again, it is something that you have to consider down the line. And while you might be hyper focused on muscle gain right now or hyper focused on fat loss right now, you should always be looking at, how do I actually get to the stage where I can maintain, like I'm happy with what I've achieved, I can actually maintain that, and then how do you actually go about achieving that. Anyway guys, that is the video. If you like the video, do all that kind of stuff, you know, share it, subscribe, hit the notification bell, whatever, you know, do all that Facebook, Instagram, influencer stuff, YouTube influencer stuff. It does actually help the channel grow. Anyway, I will talk to you again